Hi, good morning. My name is Sarandis Jackson, and I'm going to present my project today for Human Sexual Development, Dr. Deshawn's class. The area of focus for me in this project is the LGBTQ community. So thank you so much for joining me. All right, so my focus was LGBTQ Can I Counsel? And the reason I chose that is because as I move through this program, I am really looking forward to working with clients and working with a really diverse client group. And so I understand that there are areas in which I don't have experience or very little experience. Working with members of the LGBTQ community is an interest of mine, and I decided that I wanted to kind of educate myself on ways to be a competent counselor, on ways to make sure that I am providing the very best services to my clients who may identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or transsexual, or queer and or questioning. And so that was the focus, and that is going to be the focus based on our driving questions. How does human sexual development affect the following? Individual personalities within society. And so within that, we very well may have clients who come to us and they may identify either initially or later on within their sessions as a member of the LGBTQ community. And so these are just some of the terms that are out there and that we are frequently hear and are frequently used, such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and or transsexual. And so sometimes, I don't know if anyone else pays this any attention, but I do notice this, that when you hear conversations about either whether on the media, in the media, or if you're just talking to someone, you may hear the LGBT community versus the LGBTQ community. And so in conducting this research, I've learned that there is somewhat of a rift within the community as a whole on whether to include the Q. Obviously, LGBT is inclusive of lesbian, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, but the Q is for queer and or questioning. And that's identified as a person who identifies as queer or questioning of their sexual identity and orientation. And so what I've learned is that there is this need to sometimes identify with one of those larger groups. When you have individuals who will say, well, I don't choose to identify with any of the gender binaries, or I am still questioning, or I am still queer, and this is okay for me. Having an understanding of just terminology about any particular group is going to be very valuable. And it also kind of helps to expand my mind in the way that I think, in that I may have someone, a client that comes into my office, and they may have issues that don't necessarily relate to their identity or sexual orientation, but they may have some issues that come up just about, internal strife or divisiveness within their particular cultural group. And so being aware just or knowledgeable of these types of differences, I've found is probably going to be invaluable. So again, the individual personalities within society is going to be Cassie. And Cassie was very kind enough to allow me to interview her. And so I've got an actual interview with her that I'll share with you all a little later on in the presentation. But just to tell you a little bit about Cassie, Cassie is transgender. She is 21 years old. She transitioned from male to female. She's a college student and a local retail sales associate. and she's gay. And she said that at about the age of 12, she knew that something was different, that she always wanted to be a woman. And so you may say, okay, Sarandis, why are you referring to Cassie as a she? Because that is offering Cassie the respect that she has requested, that she desires. It's also very important, especially in the transgender, transsexual communities, to identify a person by their appropriate pronoun. And that means simply allowing for that individual to be presented and represented as they wish to be. And so even though Cassie was born a male, she presents as a female. And so her preference of pronouns are all those of the female pronouns: she, her, and hers. So here's a little video about the importance of pronouns.
Pronoun is the word that takes place of a noun in a sentence. Words like he, her, his, and hers are all examples of pronouns that we commonly use. They're an integral part of how we communicate with each other, and most of us use them without thinking. But pronouns can be specifically important to those who identify both inside and outside of the gender binary. Terms like he and she are gendered pronouns that are in common use. We're used to looking at someone and assuming what their pronouns are, but assuming pronouns can impact trans and non-binary people in a very negative way. Misgendering is when you use a pronoun that does not reflect the identity of the person that you're addressing. As a trans woman, when I started my transition, misgendering is something that happened to me very often. I mean, I understood why it was happening. They had become accustomed to addressing me with pronouns that were generally associated with boys. But being misgendered made me feel miserable. I could be having an amazing day, I could look good, and everything could be going well, but the moment that somebody would misgender me, my entire day, my entire week was ruined. And it was far more hurtful when it was done by people who claimed to care for me. Being misgendered felt like a knife at the back of my neck. It was completely emotionally draining to the point where, to be completely honest with you, I cut off a lot of my relationships. I don't experience misgendering at all now. But every time I visit my family, it happens non-stop. So, long story short, I don't really have much of a relationship with my family. If you care about someone, you'll respect who they are. And part of respecting trans and non-binary people is using the right pronoun. I'm a trans woman. My identity is binary and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. My pronouns are non-negotiable. But there are some people who use preferred pronouns, and some people who use more than one set of pronouns. I get it. It's confusing. And most trans and queer people understand that you're not going to get it at first. But once it's explained to you, it should be respected. Many people who do not identify within the confines of the gender binary opt to use the non-gendered pronoun they. Non-binary people are constantly having to defend why they use they pronouns. A popular rebuttal for this is that they is not grammatically correct when referring to a single person, which is silly because we use it that way all the time. If you're on a freeway and someone cuts you off and you don't have a view of the driver, you'll usually say, they cut you off. If you're at a restaurant for breakfast and the chef puts too much pepper on your eggs, you'll say, they over-seasoned it. Rain Rose, who previously went by the stage name Angel Hayes, has come out and said that they are agender and they prefer they, them, their pronouns. A great rule of thumb is if you don't know somebody's pronouns, using they, them, and their is pretty safe. But even better is asking. Communicating to a trans or queer person that you're open to using their pronouns can really, really change their day. Sometimes trans people, especially non-binary people, are so used to being misgendered that communicating to them that you're open to using their pronouns can alleviate a lot of stress. And by using them, you can encourage other people to use them as well. So if you're unsure, just politely pull them aside and ask them, What are your pronouns? Sometimes the answers might be confusing and you won't always understand why they use those pronouns. But don't challenge them on it. Remind yourself that their identity does not rely on your understanding, and their gender is valid whether you understand it or not. It can take some adjusting, and sure, you'll slip up every once in a while. But if you love someone, you'll work at it. So hopefully this video was helpful to you guys. I was recently in a video by BuzzFeed with a bunch of really cool trans people like Buck Angel and Ian Harvey and Kate Morenstein, and we made a video about pronouns. So I will put a link, I'll put an annotation somewhere in this video to that video so you can go and watch that. And as per usual, always remember and never forget that you are beautiful and you're loved. Bye! If you like this video,
Okay, so I learned a lot about the pronouns. I was completely ignorant to anything about that as it relates to LGBTQ clients or just people who identify as LGBTQ. So what are our gender inclusive pronouns? As the young lady stated in the video: she, her, hers; he, his, him; they, them, theirs. There are also some additions to that don't necessarily constrict you to a male or female set of pronouns. And so in trying to make sure that you use language and you respect your clients, again, knowing and using the correct pronouns if you should be working with a client that is transgender or LGBTQ, then that's just another way of saying and expressing to the client that you are really there and interested in just trying to be aware and knowledgeable about their culture. I got a lot of information from two great resources here in Birmingham. One is the Magic City Acceptance Center, and the other is the Magic City Wellness Center. Both are subsidiaries of a larger organization, a larger nonprofit called Birmingham AIDS Outreach. Both centers operate under one roof, and they are basically to serve the LGBTQ community here in the Birmingham metro area, members of the LGBTQ community, as well as their allies. So we talked about interpersonal relationships. Again, going back to one of the three driving questions: how does human sexual development affect interpersonal relationships? And I have another video that I'd like to share with you, and this is Cassie's video. And I apologize that I've got to kind of go about getting the video this way, but I had trouble loading it. So again, this is Cassie, and Cassie is our interviewee. She's a 21-year-old college student, also works here in the Birmingham area in retail sales.
All right, Cassie, so you're 21, and we were talking about me actually learning something while working on this project about pronouns. So what is your pronoun? Explain to me the importance of what does that mean to you?
I mean, to me, it is kind of a respect thing, because if you see someone and they identify themselves as, well, I want to take me for example, I'm transgender, and I identify myself as she, her, and hers. I would want you to respect me and call me that, like, oh, she's, that's hers, you know, things like that. When you see other people, for another example, if you see a natural born woman, but she carries herself as a man, her pronouns might be him, his, he. It's basically just a respecting how the person identifies themselves and how they carry themselves.
So, do people, regardless of seeing you and clearly seeing that you physically appear as a woman, do you have people that will continuously or still refer to you as he or his or him?
Unfortunately, yes. And I guess it's just like the lack of respect that one would have against me. Because mostly it's like, even though if you may know, some people will still go off as she, because it's like I said, it's the way I present myself. But then you also have the other people that may know me well enough from probably way back when that may still call me he, because that's what they know me from the beginning as.
Your family, what does your family call you?
Some family calls me she, and the immediate call me by he.
How do you educate people? So say we were out together and I just kept referring to you as he. How do you find the courage as a transgender person to educate people, to stand up for yourself and say, hey, wait a minute, I respect you enough to call you as you want to be called. So how do you find that courage to advocate for yourself?
Once you get tired of hearing the same old record play over and over and over, you're just going to immediately get up and just stop that record and be like, hey, this is what you're doing, this is what needs to be done.
Explain to me, do you remember the first time that you asked somebody to call you she?
Yes. And it was, honestly, it was actually quite easy, because the thing was, when I told them about it, it was like, oh, from the get-go anyway, so I mean, and from that moment on, like, more and more people started to adapt to it, but you still have that slim percentage that's still, I wouldn't want to say ignorant about the situation, but not knowing.
Okay, so I'm coming to you out of LGBTQ. What does that acronym, what does that mean to you?
Well, do you want like the actual acronym, or what it like really means to you?
No, not the actual acronym, but
Oh,
just what it means when you hear people talk about LGBTQ, the community, or the advocacy, or LGBTQ issues. What does it mean to you? Like, I know what...
Honestly, it means unity, because at this point in this city, as bad as it may seem, I mean, LGBTQ, we are all that we have, because we already have so many people in the state and also worldwide looking down on us, because they claim that we have, well, in my LGBT community, we kind of have two stripes. We're gay and we're black. Those are the two stripes we have. But when I hear it, for us, it's just unity, togetherness, because if we see someone and we know they're part of our community, if it's something going wrong, then we're going to step up and step in and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, do you need anything? You know, things of that nature.
You just mentioned something that I wanted to ask, and I want to get two perspectives, because I know and recognize that there are struggles and obstacles that black men face. So talk to me about, you mentioned the two stripes within the community, being black and being gay, and then also transgender. Is there a difference? Do you think that it's easier for, say, a white transgender gay person?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because, for one, white transgenders, in my eyes, let's take two transgender people together. Transgender white, transgender black woman. They're gonna automatically look at the white woman because, for one, I don't understand why, but white supremacy plays a big part of everything. And then they're gonna look at the think 9 times out of 10, oh well, she's uneducated, she probably didn't graduate school, but what if it's the other way around? What if the white transgender woman didn't have an education, or if the white transgender woman was a bad egg just out of the bunch, point blank, period? Then what?
So let's talk about LGBTQ and issues that impact and issues that affect the community. We can get all the studies, and I can tell you what I've read are some of the major issues, but I would like for you to tell me what are some of the issues that impact you and your community.
Well, one of the major issues, I would want to say this is the lack of education and the knowledge of the LGBT community. And then you also have some people that's in the LGBT community, some think, well, they're accepted by the outside eye. Some of them think they're better than the others that's still in the community, but it doesn't really work like that. You're in the same struggle. Some people just put on a facade just to keep you at bay. Hard to say, but it's the truth.
So, ignorance of the community, because I guess any community would pretty much be the same and share. What about any concerns about discrimination?
Yeah, that really plays a big part, especially with transgender.
Why?
Transgender people. Because, like I said, it goes back to the 2 or 3 stripes. Black, gay, trans. It just honestly goes all back to that. That's something that I personally believe that Alabama has not really accustomed itself to. But Alabama has to realize that we are here. We're not going anywhere, clearly. And it's just times are just, rapidly changing. So still, it's a thing called respect that most of Alabama still needs to learn.
What about violence against members of the LGBT community? We talk about violence within the Black community. We talk about violence on a terroristic scale. Do you have any concerns? Have you had any experiences?
Yes, I actually have. It's kind of like a hate thing. Like, you see someone different and you just automatically just visualize, oh, they're different. Let's get them. And I've actually had an experience to where I was minding my own business. I was in the mall and, just going in shopping or whatever, someone's eye, and they tried to approach me, and personally I was just like, well, I don't think that's a good idea. You don't look like the type of person that, would actually, talk to a transgender person. And after I told him I was transgender, he kind of flipped out a little bit, and I just really ignored it, and I went back to doing what I was doing. So when I came out of the mall, I don't know how or what happened. This woman was like, there are some guys, so just walk and come with me, and I'll take you back to your car. Just show me where it is. Just don't go that way. I was just like, wow, it's really that.
So let's talk about you, Cassie. 21 years old, right?
Yeah.
And where are you from?
I'm from Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay.
Born and raised.
And so, what part of Birmingham?
The West End area.
Okay. And talk to me about your childhood, and when did you, looking back, can you say that there was a time when you were growing up when you identified differently than your physical, than the way you were born physically?
Yes, I would personally say it would have happened at the age of, if I can remember correctly, 12. All my life I was kind of different from everybody else, but I really didn't pay it no mind because I was young. I was still a child, but I personally still knew on the inside, like, well, this is the wrong body for me.
Why did you think that?
Because you know how guys are usually attracted to, well, basically it'll just go back to this. You can be raised in the same house but still be different.
Right.
It really goes to that. Like, I've always felt like anyone else that was around.
To you as you're a young man and you should play basketball, football, and play with snakes and snails and puppy dog tails and like girls. And so at 12, you kind of feel like that you realized that things were different for you?
Yes, but the thing about that is, even though I realized that I didn't want to disappoint anyone, and the only person that approval that I really wanted was my mom. Unfortunately, I got the approval before it was too late. Well, when it was too late, because as soon as I told my mom, and that was at the age of 17, miraculously she was like, I already knew, and I was like, really? I made it that obvious. But yeah, like later on down that line, like when I told her, she passed away a few weeks after, and I regretted that decision for the rest of my life. It was just like, why I wish I could have told her sooner and made her, well, not make her, but actually try to get her to accustomed to what could become.
So your mom, when you came, was that you coming out to your mom, or was that you just sharing with your mom you wanted to be a woman?
It was actually a little bit of both, coming out and sharing with my mom I wanted to be a woman.
Learning are different because everybody that comes out does not have a passion or a goal or an intent to perhaps change their gender. So she did express to you that she kind of knew,
and she had no problem with it, from my understanding, and that's what shocked me the most. And from that moment on, I knew, well, this was the only person's approval that I needed. I could care less about anybody else.
Would you share with me what she said, other than did she offer any words of wisdom to you?
She said, if you're going to do this, make sure you do it 100%. Be the best you could be. Make sure you in life, which is to be a good kid and stay on the right path, get an education, yada, 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 things of that nature.
So who are the women? Obviously, you only had such a short period of time, like 17 years with your mom, but I'm sure you remember and can take a lot of things, like the way she dressed. So who are some of the women you think have kind of molded from, take a little bit from, growing into the woman that you are today?
Oh, that's a good little list. Well, I would want to start with my mom, because my mom was always so confident. She was be my aunt, because she's also taught me that when it comes to life, you have to get your business situated, always. The next person would be my and from what I've learned from her, it's the way that you carry yourself as a woman. The way that you carry yourself will let everyone else that sees you know what type of woman you are, and also not to care what other people say. I mean, there are naysayers and everything in the world. You just have to ignore it and be the best person that you.
We're going to get a little bit personal. Is that okay? Okay. In your sexual development, you said you knew at about the age of 12 that you were probably born in the wrong body, is the way you put it. Okay. And I guess would that have been the same time that you realized that you were gay? Had you had an attraction to before that or during that time?
Yeah, I did, but I just kept it suppressed.
And would it
like, what is going on? Why am I? Am I sure about this? And then later on down the line, I realized, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Did you at around that time have an interest or any type of physical or sexual attraction towards girls? No,
Absolutely not.
and so let's talk about at 17 when you came out and you disclosed everything to your mom. Physically, had you began to change your appearance or like the way that you dressed and presented as a female? Did that happen before age of 17?
It happened. I started to picture in my mind, what type of woman would I want to be, or I would want to put in everybody's head, you know? It was basically like that, and then I just kept putting bits and pieces together, like, okay, this is who I am.
obviously being born male, and knowing that your desire would to be female, what type of physical changes did you undertake?
Well, as you can see, I didn't used to be this size. I'm actually more shaped like a woman now. Back then, you could tell if I was a guy or not at the time, but now, as you can see, you really can't. Not by first look. So I started to like eat a little bit more, tone my body the way a woman would tone her body, in a way to give you that woman allure.
And so then your clothing and everything, you had these great women that showed you and talked to you, were willing to talk to you about being and presenting and the things that women know and how to carry themselves. Who talked to you?
Friend Nicole.
What did she tell you about sex?
She told me about the birds and the bees, but on the LGBTQ side, she always told me to just be safe and wear condoms.
And how old were you when you had your first sexual experience?
My first sexual experience was 16.
To your mother. And was it with a female or male?
No, it was with a male.
Okay. Have you ever...
Okay, so that is a little bit of Cassie's interview. Again, she shared a lot, really, about her relationships and her interpersonal relationships with her mom and friends, family members, and strangers and people within the community. I'm going to go back now to this presentation, and I apologize for the buffering. I don't know what was going on with that, but we'll move on to the other section here, which is going to be, give me a second, I think I'm losing my, I did, so let me just slide on back because I think my connection has kind of kicked me off, but I can tell you where I've left off. Okay, so we just finished up with this interview and talking about the interpersonal relationships, and so I used Cassie. Now we're going to talk about clinical practice and the clinical implications in your clinical practice. So here's some information that that I found about really for practitioners. Psychologists are encouraged to educate students about the nature and effects of heterosexual privilege and to challenge heterosexist bias. And so basically, you know, this information is really just trying to give you just an idea of what's out there in your clinical practice. But furthermore, it also really talks about ways of, you know, relying on resources and actually looking for resources, and then knowing yourself and where you stand with your own sexuality, whether it is you are heterosexual or you identify as LGBTQ, knowing and understanding any biases that you may have. Those also include biases related to religion. Despite the rising emphasis on diversity training during graduate education and internships, there are studies that show that graduate students are saying that they received inadequate education and training in lesbian, gay, and bisexual issues. And so you have to, you know, think about how and where we get our information. I, you know, have enjoyed a number of the classes that we've had to take and that I've been pursuing this degree in professional counseling. But, do we get the exposure that we need to be able to say that we are able to touch those different groups? In particular, I've already taken the social and multicultural diversity course, and it was a really good course. Also, one course that I can relate to and remember is going back to Dr. Deshawn's course, and we talked about the systems, a previous course that I had taken, and different systems and how systems can affect and impact your clients, not just LGBTQ clients. But I also want to share with you another video, and this video is from the director of the Magic City Acceptance Center, as well as the director of the Magic City Wellness Center. And if I can pull this up, here we go. And this is Kyle Pugh and Amanda Keller. Kyle is the clinical director for the Magic City Wellness Center, and so he was just sharing some information with me about the need. Both of them were sharing information about the need for the services that they provide at these two nonprofits.
Call them by the correct pronouns that they want to be called by, or the correct name, or whatever it is. They are not going to be treated poorly just because of who's. At the end of the day, there are things like HIPAA laws out there, and it's nobody's business except you and your provider. So when they come in here, they don't have to worry about any of that. They can leave it all outside.
Amanda? I think from the center perspective, it was really interesting. We've been incredibly supported by the community. However, there was a lot of backlash on AL.com. You know to never read the comments, but we did that. And it was very interesting how people just were floored that we even needed this building. And they're like, kids have schools, they have places to get these resources. This is ridiculous. I don't want this in our community. But the fact of the matter is that these are youth. These are individuals who having their own agency to take control of their lives. A lot of times they're not supported at home. They're certainly not supported in schools, in most schools anyway. And so there are a lot of public arenas where youth don't have a voice. And the people who are supposed to protect them either are not able to for whatever reasons, or they don't know how to, which is more important. And so we exist just simply as a resource for teachers. We provide trainings. We've seen a huge change.
And so Amanda and Kyle were talking about the two agencies in which they work for: the Magic City Acceptance Center, which is a nonprofit clubhouse for LGBTQ youth and their allies ages 12 to 24. The Acceptance Center serves as like a come-together spot. They recently hosted, back in May, Gay Prom. Next week they will have an LGBTQ camp that they call Queer Camp. It's going to run for about a week, but there's a lot of advocacy going on. Just like Amanda mentioned, there's also counseling that's being offered there at the Acceptance Center. So, it's chock full of resources. It's just a safe place also for LGBTQ youth to go receive information and pick up other resources about things going on within the community. On the flip side of that, and also housed in the same building, is Kyle's responsibility, and Kyle's the director of the Magic City Wellness Center. And so the Wellness Center provides health care, affordable health care to members of the LGBTQ community in an environment in which is non-intimidating. So to talk about, I definitely want to share this about clinical practice because Amanda and Kyle both shared this with me. they were, obviously in the interview just discussing the importance of the services that they provide and the reason that they are there providing those services. But they were talking about some clinical implications. One of the implications that Kyle mentioned was that they actually were able to get a vendor, an insurance vendor, to utilize the preferred name of a patient as opposed to the birth name. And so this patient was born, let's say, John Doe, but was a trans patient. And so the preferred name for this patient would have been, say, Jane Doe. And Kyle indicated that, he really felt bad in knowing that these invoices or letters and things or insurance correspondence were being sent to clients in this name in which they did not even identify with. They had closed the chapter and closed the door on that particular person. And so he and Amanda had lobbied and actually worked with one of their vendors out of Colorado. And the vendor, basically responded, I never thought about that. And they actually changed their policy in which they are able to utilize the preferred name of the client. Kyle also talked about clinical practice of just having a safe place and being somewhere, being in an environment where you are able to work and be around people who are similar and share similarities. Kyle mentioned that his husband gets his health care. He receives his health care from the primary care physician on staff at the wellness center. And so, some of the things that he mentioned was just, again, like Amanda saying that the acceptance center provides a safe place. The wellness center is an environment in which LGBTQ community members are able to come in and they don't have to feel like they are going to be scrutinized or there's any type of an additional stigma simply because of who they are. So that is the crux of my project, LGBTQ Can I Counsel? And again, it was really just an opportunity for me to kind of grow and learn more about the community. It's been really interesting, especially doing the research paper and then being able to go and find additional resources for this part of the project, in that I've learned a lot about not just issues, but really being able to think of the type of counselor or therapist that I would like to be and the type of environment I'd like to provide for all of my clients. Of course, adhering to ACA codes of ethics, maintaining an environment where people feel welcomed and that they understand I am willing to listen and to work with them and work with them to achieve a healthy mental state and a healthy and positive mental state. So that was my primary reason for choosing the LGBTQ community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this information with you, and I've enjoyed the presentations thus far and looking forward to winding down this semester. Thank you.